Part 1. The Haunted Veteran. The lights flickered in the old space bar on station. Nexus 7. Commander Vextel sat alone at a corner table, his 6 arms wrapped around a bottle of blue liquid that burned like fire. His black shell was cracked and scarred from too many battles. But the worst scars were the ones you couldn't see. A young reporter named Zik Star walked up to his table. The kid looked nervous, his green skin turning pale. "Commander, sir? I heard you fought the humans during the war. Could you tell me about them?" Vexel's 4 eyes turned red. His claws scratched the metal table. "Humans? You want to know about humans, kid?" The old warrior took a long drink. The alcohol made his voice rough. "I'll tell you about humans. But not the lies they tell in the history books. I'll tell you the truth." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Their names were Daeseong, Ho-Yoon, and Seokujin. 3 humans who changed everything. 3 humans who taught an entire galaxy to fear. The reporter's recording device started glowing as Vextel began his story. It was supposed to be easy. Small human mining colony on a dead rock planet called Kepler 44b. Just 300 humans with basic tools and no weapons. Our commanders said it would take 1 day, maybe 2 if they were stubborn. Vextel's mandibles clicked like broken glass. We brought 10,000 warriors, our best ships, our finest weapons. We thought we were going to crush some weak miners and take their resources. The old commander's voice got quieter. We had no idea we were walking into hell. The reporter waited, not wanting to break the spell. The humans knew we were coming. They had been watching our ships for days. While we prepared our grand invasion, they turned their entire colony into a death trap. Vextel's claws dug deeper into the table. Daeseong was their leader, not a soldier, just a mining foreman. When we sent our surrender demand, he came. On the come screen, he looked at our battle fleet and laughed. Actually laughed at 10,000 alien warriors. The veteran's eyes grew distant. He said something I'll never forget. "You picked the wrong planet, Bugface. We're not going anywhere." Ho-Yoon was just a kid, 16 years old by human standards. She should have been afraid, should have been crying for her parents. Instead, she was in the engineering section, building bombs out of mining equipment. Vextel shuddered. And Seokujin, he was their tech specialist. Quiet, smart, dangerous. While we were talking about surrender, he was hacking into our ship. Systems. Learning our weaknesses. Planning our destruction. The reporter's skin turned even paler. "What happened when you landed?" We dropped our assault pods right into their trap. They had turned every corridor into a kill zone. Every room was a fortress. The humans fought like wild animals, but smart wild animals. They used their own blood as weapons. They turned their dead into bombs. Vexel's voice cracked. I watched Daeseong take a plasma shot to the chest. Any other species would have died instantly. But he kept fighting, grabbed a mining torch, and turned 3 of my best warriors into melted metal. The kid, Hoen, she rigged the entire mining section with explosives. When my advance team cornered her, she smiled. She actually smiled as she blew herself up, taking 40 of my soldiers with her. The commander finished his drink and stared at the empty bottle. But Seokujin was the worst. He got into our computer systems and turned our own technology against us. Made our armor cook us alive. Made our weapons explode in our hands. And the whole time, he was playing human music through our cum systems. War songs, they called them. Loud, violent, angry music that made them fight harder. To this day, I can't hear drums without remembering that battle. The reporter was quiet for a long moment. How long did the battle last? 8 months. 8 months of pure hell. We lost more than half our force and the humans. They just kept fighting. Even when they were dying, they kept fighting. The Vextel's voice became a whisper. That's when we learned the truth about humans. They don't fight for money or land or power. They fight because they're angry, and they stay angry for a very, very long time. The old warrior stood up slowly, his battle-scarred body creaking. You want to know about humans, kid? They're not like us. They're not civilized. They're something else. Something that should have died out millions of years ago. I walked toward the door, then stopped. But they didn't die out. they survived, and they learned. And that's what makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The reporter watched him go, suddenly understanding why the war had ended not with victory, but with fear. Part 2. The First Blood. Vextel ordered another drink, his hands shaking as he poured the blue liquid. The reporter waited, knowing something terrible was coming. Daesiong was their leader, the old warrior said, his claws making deep scratches in the metal table. Just a mining foreman. No military training, no fancy weapons, no battle armor. When we sent our surrender message, he came on the screen wearing dirty work clothes and a smile. The journalist leaned closer, his recording device capturing every word. Our Admiral Kreckstyle was furious. Here was this human, this nobody, looking at our massive war fleet like it was a joke. Daesiong scratched his beard and said, "You boys lost? This is a mining colony, not a tourist stop." Vextel's sprites turned darker. He held up a piece of mining equipment, some kind of cutting tool, and said, "See this? We use it to cut through? Solid rock. Wonder what it would do to alien armor." The Admiral demanded immediate surrender. Daesiong just laughed. "Tell you what, Bug Eyes, you can try to take her home. We dig deep, we work hard, and we don't give up easy." The veteran took a long drink. That's when we knew this wouldn't be simple, but we had no idea how bad it would get. The humans had been busy while we traveled to their world. They turned their entire colony into a death maze. Every hallway was rigged with traps. Every door was booby-trapped. Every room was a killing ground. Vextel's voice got quieter. When our first assault pods landed, Daesiong was waiting for us. Turned mining equipment into weapons. Plasma cutters became flamethrowers. Rock drills became armor piercers. Even their food processors were turned into projectile weapons. I was leading the third wave when I saw him fight for the first time. My squad had cornered him in the main mining tunnel. He was bleeding from 3 different wounds. His clothes were torn, and he should have been dead. The reporter's skin went pale as Vextel continued. Lieutenant Zarkoth hit him center mass with a plasma bolt. The shot burned a hole right through his chest. Any civilized being would have fallen down and died. But Daesiong looked down at the wound, looked back at us, and said, "That stung." Vextel's mandibles clicked rapidly. Then he did something that still gives me nightmares. He reached into his own wound, pulled out his bleeding hand, and threw his blood right into Zarkoth's face sensors. Blinded him completely. While my lieutenant was stumbling around blind, Daesiong grabbed a mining torch. These things are designed to cut through the hardest rock in the galaxy. He turned it on my 3 best warriors. The old commander's voice broke. I watched him turn Sergeant Vexener into melted metal in 3 seconds. Corporal Zixmal tried to run, but the human was faster. By the time I could react, 3 of my finest soldiers were just puddles of slag on the tunnel floor. Daesiong. He stood there with a hole in his chest, covered in his own blood, and asked if we wanted to surrender. The reporter's recording device shook in his trembling hands. But the kid, Haoun, she was even worse. 16 years old by human standards, should have been learning, playing, being a child. Instead, she was in the mining sections building bombs. Vextel's eyes grew distant. She looked so small when we cornered her. My advanced team of 20 warriors surrounded one human child in the deepest mining tunnel. She was covered in dirt and grease, holding some kind of homemade device. "Captain." Mordix ordered her to surrender. She looked up at him with these bright human eyes and said, "Sorry, can't do that. Got a job to finish." That's when we realized the entire mining section was rigged with explosives. Not military grade, not professional. Just mining charges connected with human creativity and determination. The veteran's voice cracked. She could have run. The tunnel had 3 escape routes. She could have saved herself. Instead, she looked at my warriors and said, "Tell my parents I kept the lights on." Then she smiled. Actually smiled as she pressed the detonator. Vextal was quiet for a long moment. The explosion brought down half the mountain. 40 of my best warriors buried under tons of rock. And for what? To buy her people 3 more hours of resistance? But that's humans for you. They don't calculate odds. They don't think about survival. They just think about the mission. The reporter waited as the old warrior gathered himself. And then there was Co. Kajin, their tech specialist. Quiet, smart, and absolutely terrifying. While we were fighting Daeseong and dealing with Hyun's explosives, he was in their computer center doing something impossible. Vextal's claws dug deeper into the table. He hacked into our battle systems. Not just communications, but everything. Life support, weapons, medical systems, even our food processors. Things that should be impossible to hack from the outside. Suddenly our armor started overheating. Warriors were cooking alive inside their own protective suits. Our weapons began exploding in our hands. Our medical bays started injecting poison instead of healing drugs. The old commander's voice became a whisper. And through it all, he was playing human music through our comm systems. Loud, angry, violent sounds they call war songs. The noise made them fight harder while it drove us insane. I can still hear those drums. That screaming human music. Every beat matched with another one of my warriors falling. Every song meant more death. Vextal finished his drink and stared at the empty glass. That was just the first day. The first day of 8 months of hell. The reporter realized he was holding his breath. What happened next? The old warrior looked up with haunted eyes. Next we learned that humans don't fight wars, they fight crusades. Part 3. The siege horror. Vextal's hands shook as he poured another drink. The blue liquid spilled on the table, but he didn't seem to notice. His 4 eyes stared into the distance, seeing things that happened long ago. The siege lasted 8 months, he whispered, his voice barely audible in the noisy space bar. 8 months of pure nightmare. We started with 10,000 warriors, the finest soldiers in the Krillian Empire. By the end, we had lost more than half our force. The journalist's green skin had turned almost white. How is that possible? You had superior weapons, better armor, more soldiers? Because humans don't fight like civilized beings, Vextal interrupted, his claws leaving deep gouges in the metal table. They fight like something wild, something that should have died out millions of years ago. They use everything as weapons. They're dead, they're wounded, they're children. Nothing is sacred to them in war. The old warrior took a long drink before continuing. After the first week, we thought we had them beaten. We controlled most of the surface, had them trapped in the underground tunnels. Our commanders were already planning victory celebrations. That's when the humans showed us what real warfare. Looks like Vextal's voice got darker. They turned their own dead into traps. Bodies rigged with explosives, positioned to look like they were still alive. My soldiers would approach to check if they were really dead, and boom, another squad. Gone. They used their wounded as bait. Human would lie in a corridor, crying for help, bleeding, looking helpless. When we tried to capture them for information, they would detonate hidden charges or release poison gas. The reporter's recording device captured every horrifying detail. Daeseong died on day 43. We thought losing their leader would break their spirit. We were wrong. It made them angrier. Vextal's mandibles clicked nervously. He started moving his body around the colony. We would find him in different places, always posed like he was still giving orders. Sometimes sitting at a desk with papers in front of him, sometimes standing guard at a checkpoint. Sometimes just leaning against a wall like he was taking a break. It was psychological warfare at its worst. My soldiers started seeing him everywhere, even in places where his body wasn't. They thought he was some kind of ghost, still commanding the human forces from beyond death. The veteran's voice cracked. The truth was worse. The humans were using their dead leader as a symbol. Every time we saw his body, it meant we were walking into another trap. Hyun lasted until day 67. After she blew up the mining section, we thought she was dead, but she survived, barely. Broken bones, internal bleeding, should have been in a medical bay. Vextel shuddered. Instead, she spent her final weeks building what she called presents for us. Homemade weapons that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Acid bombs made from mining chemicals that ate through our armor like it was paper. Sonic weapons, built from construction equipment that turned our internal organs to liquid. Gas canisters filled with hallucinogenic compounds that made us see our worst nightmares. The reporter was quiet, horrified by what he was hearing. I watched Sergeant Morkex get hit by one of her acid bombs. The chemical ate through his armor, his skin, his bones. He screamed for 6 hours before he died. And Haoun, she was watching from her hiding spot, taking notes on how to make the next batch more effective. When we finally found her, she was dying from her injuries. But she was still building weapons, still designing new ways to kill us. Her last present was a sonic device that could shatter our exoskeletons from the inside out. Vextel finished his drink and immediately poured another. She died with a smile on her face, holding the detonator for one final bomb. Even in death, she managed to take out 3 more of my warriors, but Seo Jin was the worst of all. He was like a ghost in their computer systems. Every day, our technology would turn against us in new ways. Our weapons would jam at crucial moments. Our communications would broadcast human war songs instead of orders. Our medical scanners would show false readings. The old commander's voice became barely a whisper. We tried everything to stop him. We sent cyber warfare specialists. We tried cutting all electronic connections. We even destroyed entire sections of our own equipment. Nothing worked. He always found a way in. On day 244, we finally breached their last stronghold. It had taken us 8 months to capture a mining colony that should have fallen in one day. We expected to find maybe a dozen desperate humans hiding in the deepest tunnels. Instead, we found Eseogin alone in the central command center. Had been dying for weeks, maybe months. His body was failing, but his mind was still sharp, still dangerous. Vexel's eyes filled with something that might have been tears. He was sitting at his console, fingers still moving across the keyboard. When we burst in, he didn't even look up, just said, "Took you long enough." I was getting bored. That's when we realized the truth. This human, this dying, broken human had been controlling the entire defense by himself. For months, he had been the one turning our technology against us, coordinating attacks, keeping the resistance alive. As we watched, he activated one final program, the virus that corrupted our entire fleet database. Centuries of tactical knowledge, battle plans, weapon specifications, everything we had learned about warfare, gone in seconds. The reporter's mandibles quivered even as he was dying. Even as he was dying, he was still fighting us. His last words were, "Tell your commanders that humans don't surrender. We just get more creative." Vextel stared into his empty glass. When he died, the lights in the command center flickered once, like the machines were saying goodbye to their master. And we realized that we hadn't won anything. We had just survived. The old warrior's voice broke completely. That's when we learned the most terrifying truth about humans. They don't fight to win. They fight to make sure their enemies remember them forever. Part 4. The broken fleet Vexel stared at the empty bottle, his 4 eyes reflecting the dim lights of the space station. The alcohol had made his voice stronger, but his memories more painful. "The war should have ended there," he said, his claws drumming against the table. We had won, technically. Colony was destroyed. Every human was dead. Our commanders declared victory and prepared to return home as heroes. The journalist leaned forward, but it didn't end. That was just the beginning of our nightmare. Vextel ordered another bottle, his hands still shaking. You have to understand how humans think. When we destroy their enemies, we forget about them. When humans lose their people, they remember forever. Word spread through human space faster than our ships could travel. The story of Kepler-442b became legend. 3 humans who held off 10,000 alien warriors for 8 months. Dae-seong, the leader who wouldn't surrender. Ho-in, the young engineer who turned science into warfare. Seo, Jin, the tech master who made our own machines kill us. The veterans' mandibles clicked rapidly. Humans have this strange concept they call martyrdom. Instead of forgetting their dead, they worship them. They turn their failures into inspiration for revenge. Within one cycle, every human world knew their names. Children were named after them. Songs were written about them. Artists painted pictures of them fighting impossible odds. Vexel's voice got darker. Then 2 cycles, they were building monuments. Massive statues on every human planet. Museums dedicated to their heroic sacrifice. Schools teaching their tactics to human children. But monuments don't fight wars. People do. And the humans who came after them were different. Angry. Focused. They had studied every detail of our invasion. Learned our tactics. Found our weaknesses. The reporter's skin had turned pale green. What did they do? They built new ships. Not just any ships, but vessels designed specifically to kill us. And they named them after our 3 victims. Vexel took a long drink. The Dae-seong class carriers were massive, ugly things. No grace, no beauty, just raw, destructive power. They could launch 1,000 fighter craft in minutes, each one piloted by humans who fought like their dead hero. I saw my first Dae-seong carrier at the Battle of Wolf 359. It was 3 times larger than our biggest dreadnought, covered in weapons and fighter bays. When it opened fire, the space around it turned into a storm of laser beams and missiles. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was how they fought. The old warrior's voice cracked. They came at us like a swarm of angry insects. Formation. No battle plan that made sense to civilized minds. It's just pure, suicidal aggression. They used their own ships as weapons, ramming them into our formations. I watched a human fighter pilot crash his damaged craft into our command ships. Bridge he could have ejected, saved himself. Instead he aimed for our tactical center and took out half our senior officers. Vextel's claws left deep scratches in the metal table. The Hayun-class destroyers were even worse. They were built for one purpose: to get close to our ships and explode. Everything about them was designed for that final moment of destruction. I called them ghost ships because they would appear on our sensors for just long enough to deliver death. Cloaking technology, stealth armor, engines that could accelerate them to impossible speeds. The reporter was taking notes frantically. How many ships did you lose? At the Battle of Proxima Centauri, we lost 60% of our fleet to Hayun destroyers. They would appear out of nowhere, right next to our biggest ships, and detonate their entire antimatter reserves. I was on the bridge of the cruiser Mortaxis when a Hayun destroyer materialized 50 meters away from us. The human captain looked directly at our view screen and saluted. Then she pressed the detonation button. Vextel's voice became barely a whisper. The explosion tore our ship in half. I survived because I was thrown into an escape pod by the blast. But I watched 3,000 of my fellow warriors die in seconds, killed by one human who chose death over defeat. And the Seogin-class stealth frigates... The old commander shuddered. Those were the stuff of nightmares. You couldn't see them coming, couldn't detect them until they were already inside your formations. They would infiltrate our battle. Groups hack into our computer systems and turn our own weapons against us. It's just like their namesake had done in that mining colony. At the Battle of Vega Station, we thought we were fighting 3 enemy fleets. Our sensors showed ships everywhere, all firing at us. It wasn't until later we realized it was just 12 Seochin frigates making our own vessels attack each other. Reporter's recording device was smoking from overuse. How is that possible? Human technology had evolved. They learned from every battle, adapted to every tactic we used. The Seogin frigates carried advanced AI systems that could mimic our communication codes, override our computer systems, even make our medical bays inject poison instead of healing drugs. I watched Admiral Krexmal's flagship turn its main guns on its own escort vessels. The crew was screaming in confusion as their ship killed their allies. When we finally regained control, we found a Cajun frigate attached to our hull like a parasite. Vextel finished his drink and stared at the stars through the station's viewports. The human inside was already dead, killed by our security systems. But his ship's computer was still running, still turning our technology against us. His final message was broadcasting on all frequencies for Daeseong, Hayun, and Eseokjin. Humanity remembers. The old warrior's voice broke completely. That's when we realized we weren't fighting a war anymore. We were fighting a religion. When the humans' gods were 3 dead miners who refused to surrender. The reporter looked up from his notes, but surely you could have found a way to defeat them. Vextel's laugh was bitter and hollow. Defeat them? Kid, we never even figured out how many ships they really had. Every battle felt like we were fighting ghosts. Part 5. The Bitter Truth Vextel. S. The voice became so quiet that the reporter had to lean across the table to hear him. The space station hummed around them, but the old warrior seemed lost in his darkest memories. The war ended 3 cycles later, he whispered, his compound eyes staring at nothing. We signed a peace treaty, held victory parades, returned to our home. Worlds as conquering heroes. The entire Krillian Empire celebrated our glorious triumph over the savage humans. The journalist waited, sensing there was more to this story. But we knew the truth. We didn't win that war. We survived it. Barely. Vextel's claws scraped against the metal table, leaving fresh scratches next to the old ones. The humans never surrendered. Not once in 3 years of fighting. They never begged for mercy. They never broke under our assault. When we finally agreed to peace, it wasn't because we had defeated them. Then why? The reporter asked. Because we were terrified of what they might do if we kept teaching them how to fight. The old commander ordered one last drink, his hands steadier now that the end was near. The final battle was at Luna Station, in the Sol system. Earth's moon, the heart of human space. We brought everything we had. 1 million ships, our entire combined fleet. Every warrior from every world in the Empire. The humans had maybe 50,000 vessels. Half of them were damaged from previous battles. The crews were exhausted, their supplies running low. By every military calculation, they should have surrendered the moment they saw our armada. Vextel's voice grew stronger with the memory, but they didn't surrender. They came at us like demons, like nothing we had ever seen in 3 years. Of war, I was commanding the dreadnought Mortacus when the human fleet appeared on our sensors. They weren't in formation. They weren't following any tactical doctrine. They just came straight at us, screaming their war songs over every frequency. The reporter's recording device captured every word as the veteran continued. They used the wreckage of their own ships as weapons. I watched a human destroyer with its engines destroyed use its last momentum to ram into our command carrier. The ship was already breaking apart, its crew already dead, but they had programmed it to keep flying straight into our hull. They sacrificed entire fleets to take out single command ships. 100 human fighters would swarm one of our dreadnoughts. Not trying to escape, just trying to do as much damage as possible before they died. Vextel's eyes reflected the station's lights like dark mirrors. But the worst part came at the end. When we thought we had one. When their last ship was burning in the void, drifting dead in space. What happened? The journalist whispered. They broadcast a message across all frequencies. Every ship in both fleets received it. Every communication device in the Sol system picked it up. Even our personal comm unit started playing it. The old warrior's voice cracked. It was a human child. It's maybe 8 years old by their standards. She was standing in the ruins of Earth, in what used to be one of their great cities. Behind her, everything was destroyed. Burning buildings crashed. Ships. The sky dark with smoke. The little girl looked directly into the camera with those bright human eyes and said, "Thank you for teaching us how to fight. We'll remember this lesson." Vextel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, again, his voice was barely audible. That's when we realized our mistake. We hadn't been fighting a war. We had been teaching them one. Every battle, every tactic, every weapon we used against them, they learned from it. They adapted, evolved, became something more dangerous than we could have imagined. The peace treaty wasn't signed because we won. It was signed because we were afraid of what the humans might become if we gave them more time to learn from us. The reporter's skin had turned completely pale. What happened to the child? Her name was Yangsu. The humans say she learned warfare by watching us destroy her world. She grew up to become their greatest military leader, the admiral of their new fleet. Vextel stood up slowly, his battle-scarred body creaking. Today, human ships patrol the edges of our space. It's not as enemies, but as observers. They watch us, study us, learn from every move we make. They're preparing for the day when the peace might end. They've built new ships, designed new weapons, developed new tactics, all based on what we taught them during the war. They call their new fleet the Remembrance Armada, and every ship is named after someone who died in the fighting. Old Warrior looked directly at the journalist. You want to know about humans? They're not like us. They don't fight for resources or territory or political power. They fight because they're angry, and they stay angry for a very, very long time. Vextel walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet bar. At the door, he turned back one last time. The humans didn't lose the war. They just got bored with fighting us. And that terrifies me more than any battle ever could. The space station fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems and the distant sound of ships docking. In the quiet, the journalist realized he would never look at the stars the same way again. Somewhere out there, human ships were watching, waiting, learning, and the galaxy would never be safe again. The reporter turned off his recording device and sat alone in the empty bar, wondering if he should broadcast this story or bury it forever. Some truths, he realized, were too dangerous to share, but the humans already knew the truth. They had learned it from the best teachers in the galaxy. They had learned it from their enemies. The end.